Too much, too little. The 2025-2026 budget has allocated 781 billion shillings to the education sector, securing it the largest share of the national budget. However, beneath the impressive figures lies a growing funding crisis. School heads are still grappling with inadequate capitation as allocations fall well below the Ministry of Education's projections. The shortfall is expected to strain school operations, disrupt learning programs, and place essential services under increasing financial pressure. 4 years after pledging to transform education, the sector remains trapped in a cycle of policy implementation, funding shortfalls, and unfulfilled commitments, as Ann Musungu now reports.
Among the key promises by the president to the education sector was increased capitation for primary and secondary schools. However, 4 years later, much of the pledge remains unfulfilled despite record funding for the education sector. Stakeholders warn that the allocation still falls far short of actual needs, forcing institutions to operate under financial pressure while parents increasingly step in to bridge the funding gap.
School administrators are going to have a lot more difficult time. Why? Because as we speak now, they still have pending bills from the previous years. And right now, that budget which is being allocated would not be able to cater for the needs in this year.
The funding gap is evident across all basic education levels. Free secondary education required 78.5 billion but received only 54.6 billion. Junior schools sought 54.6 billion but were allocated only 30.9 billion, while primary schools received just 8 billion against a requirement of 15.6 billion. The shortfall translates into reduced capitation per annum. Secondary schools are expected to receive 15,779 shillings per student instead of the recommended 22,444 shillings. Junior schools, on the other hand, will get 8,536 against 15,000 shillings, while primary schools will receive 1,906 shillings, less than half of the promised 2,330 shillings. Education stakeholders are now questioning whether the funds approved by Parliament ultimately reach schools. Critics argue that while billions are set aside annually, little accountability exists to track the money to institutions, fueling concerns over inefficiency and unexplained funding gaps. Universities are facing similar financial squeeze. The sector required 29.5 billion shillings but were only allocated 16.9 billion shillings, leaving a deficit of about 12.6 billion shillings. The funding gap threatens operations at a time when institutions are already grappling with mounting debts and rising costs. The latest allocation means universities will be funded at only 57% of their actual requirements. This comes despite repeated changes in the university funding model, now revised for the third time, after being presented as the solution that will restore financial stability to struggling institutions. And Musungu, KTN, Nairobi.
Moving on, the Office of the Controller of Budget has revealed